What is the mindset of a protector? One thing alone can make the difference between failure and success: your mindset. This podcast was created for protectors in the fields of law enforcement, security, and executive protection. Tune in every week where we look in the mirror to make real changes and learn how to achieve greatness by tapping into the Sentinel mindset. This episode is brought to you by The Arena. The Arena focuses on helping law enforcement and security professionals achieve their ultimate work experience, curriculum, and fitness goals. Visit thearenatoronto.com.
Good evening, I'm Chris Glover. We begin tonight with that security incident from Saturday's Leafs game. Video of the takedown shows event staff kneeing the man in the head while he's being restrained on the ground. Toronto police say the video misses alleged actions from the man prior to the video starting and have since charged a Hamilton man with assaulting a police officer and 3 security guards. Dale Manukduk joins us live from outside Scotiabank Arena tonight. Dale, take us back to Saturday and what we've learned about this case.
Well, Chris, it happened during the Leafs 5-3 loss to the Avs. Just before 10 p.m., security went to go check and see if a man was doing okay. And police say that the guy got confrontational with security and then allegedly assaulted 3 guards. Now, a police officer came to arrest the man. And again, allegedly, that man assaulted a cop. What's interesting about the video that's been going around social media is it doesn't show any of these alleged assaults. What it does show is the man being brutalized by event staff. This video, captured on Saturday, has been viewed thousands of times online. The man in the blue suit repeatedly dropping his knee or shin onto another man's head. Moments later, his head is pounded onto the ground near what appears to be a small pool of blood. The video posted online doesn't show what happened before. I'm showing you a snippet of a video.
That's very excessive from what I saw.
Allegedly assaulted 3 security guards and a police
officer. Once he's on the ground, that's excessive force. You don't need a knee to the head. I used to do security. You don't need a knee to the head.
Put him down the most calmest way possible, but if someone's retaliating and they're going to hurt more, and you're going to let him up and he's going to continue, you got to stop him.
Toronto police have since charged 37-year-old William Anderson of Ancaster with 3 counts of assault and 1 count of assaulting an officer.
If it ever did end up at a trial, we have to remember that in Canada, the courts have already ruled that people are not expected to act to a level of perfection when using force.
Looking at only that video snippet, it would suggest that the force would be excessive or extreme.
This former Toronto cop was also an instructor at the Ontario Police College.
Not only at one point would have placed his knee, but he transitioned. He moved that, I think, 2 or 3 times, maybe 3 times. So it wasn't an accidental placement. That is not a focus point of subject control. Why? Because it leads an individual to injury.
Last month, in a separate, unrelated incident, video from a pro-Palestinian protest captured a police officer appearing to place his knee on the neck and head area of a demonstrator who allegedly shoved the cop. Toronto police initially said there was no knee-on-neck tactic used and have since said the appropriate amount of force was applied. But police and security guards aren't subject to the same training.
They're 2 totally separate entities, sir, not to be confused with one another. Security provision does not require a legislated, laid out training program to meet any particular standard, not in this province anyway.
Chris, most of the people I spoke to tonight agree that what they saw was excessive force, even with the context that this man allegedly assaulted 3 guards and a cop. It's unclear if the guards will face any discipline for their actions, but MLSE does say that it's conducting its own investigation. As for the Hamilton man, William Anderson, he's going to be in court on March 12th here in Toronto. Chris?
Dale Manukduk reporting live for us tonight from outside Scotiabank Arena. Dale, thank you very much.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to an episode of
The Protector's DNA. What would you do?
What you've watched just now is a video that went viral that happened in Toronto, Canada, this past Saturday at a Leafs game. Today with us, we have expert witness and president of Stay Safe, Stephen Summerville. How are you doing today, Steve?
Good morning. I'm doing great. How are you?
Amazing, amazing. So today we're going to be, as I stated, looking at this video and just looking at it to find out what could have been if done better. But the most important thing we want to make sure that all our audience is on the same page on is that we're not here to judge. We are not here to point fingers. We are here to take the situation, learn from it, and find out if something could have been done in a better way. Steve, what's your thoughts initially before we start getting into it?
Well, great segue, Constantine, and great way to sort of identify to the viewer for this particular podcast is to our mission statement. No agenda, nonpartisan, and very honest. Just one thing I want to point out there, too. When Dale, he's a CBC reporter, interviewed me the other day, I had about a 10-minute interview that was filmed, but probably only saw a few seconds of my broadcast. I'm going to say here, without any allegations of being nefarious, a lot of my comments were redacted. They were removed. So I'm welcome today, and I'm happy today that I can give you a fulsome view on what I saw, what I didn't see. And I'm going to ask the viewer here, let's not rush to judgment, please. We don't have, these are all allegations. This particular video clip you see may be evidence or may be a defense when we go to court, or if the situation goes to court. But just in terms of the preface, I really like the viewer after that video, and by the way, all your viewers have a right to form their own opinion. I'm not suggesting you don't. But I think any opinions that we form, being ethical and moral, we should make sure that we have all the information, all the evidence before us, before we say, here is my opinion.
Okay.
I think that'd be reasonable. So here what we have is the allegations. I've not seen a Crown brief. We have not heard evidence that allegedly there was a dispute with, I'm assuming it was a patron. Yes. And the patron, allegedly, there was an altercation with 3 security guards and a police officer. Allegations that we're hearing, not being validated, allegations that we're hearing that led to charges of assault against the 3 security guards and the 1 police officer. Interesting enough, the video clip, and I have no idea if the time or duration from the time the allegations occurred to the time we see of this particular incident with the grounding, whether those 3 individuals were the security guards involved, I don't know, or where was the police officer? Now, generally speaking, if you assault a police officer, if they're able to, they will be part of the arrest process of you. I didn't see any police officer in that particular video clip.
Okay.
Don't know if that means that the police officer was not there or if the police officer was injured or not. Those are always questions that I would ask to find out, well, why was the officer not involved? Was he or she able to? Or was there some other issue where a person may have escaped and may have been brought to the ground in this particular situation? We don't know. Okay. That will likely come out. There's 1 uniformed officer. You see him at the foot of the individual was arrested. And we have 2 people wearing suits. Now, I don't know, sir, if they are security. They might be MLSE, Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment staff. Right. Not to be confused with security. Although certainly legally in this province, you can have people working plain clothes or suit and tie, if you will, working in a security profile.
Okay.
We don't know if that was the case. But taking a look at the incident itself, we don't know what we don't know in terms of what the causational factor was. Was there a weapon possibly in this person's hands? You'll note in the video we just saw in the person's left hand, there appears to be what I call a lanyard or some form of card with a band that usually would put around a person's neck.
Right.
That was seized.
That would give them special access.
It would.
Okay.
Depending on where your access to. It could be VIP. It could be a swipe. I don't know. I really can't make out in the video in terms of what that access card would have permitted or generally granted access to.
Now, the actual video, Steve, is approximately 30 seconds long, roughly.
It is,
and
right.
and like many videos that you see like this, you're only seeing what happened in the heat. You're not seeing what happened before that led to this. So that is one thing that I've been scouring, news and all to find out what led to that. That has not yet been determined as of right now.
No.
And what we do also know is that the individual, I guess the assailant, he was charged.
Well, that's what it said. He's been charged with 3 counts of assault on security and 1 count of assault police. Right. Haven't said the scope or the magnitude of what those might be. Right. But there's a different version of that video. Now, what we saw there with the CBC clip is generally the audio was turned down. You couldn't hear the interaction, the verbiage for engaging the individual that was grounded at the time. Perhaps we could take a look at that video.
Yes.
And with your blessing, be able to speak over that, maybe get a bit of a pause. Matthew, you could hit pause. We can talk about a couple of things.
Absolutely.
Try that?
And just for those listening, our amazing Matthew, the producer, is in the back. We'll be doing this. Matt, why don't you launch that video, and then we can start doing a play-by-play.
Now, we have a 40-second video clip. And stop there, Matthew, please, for 1 second. So there again, we don't have any content or context. We have not seen what led up to the video clip about 7 seconds in of a 40-second video as to what transpired prior to lead you to this. In a perfect setting, perfect environment, this person would have been advised he was under arrest. There would be some form of lawful process. Generally speaking, let's talk about law enforcement training. We'll get into security guard training in a moment. Mm-hmm. But law enforcement training, you generally require some level or threshold of resistance to be able to justify or quantify, if you will, the need to ground a person, to take a person down. Generally, grounding is required to when a situation might be difficult or extreme cumbersome, or you're providing resistance at a level where I can't control you from a standing position. Generally, it's not punitive, but generally speaking, people are grounded or taken down as in a position face down on the ground to prevent their movement and to generate and allow access to the person's hands, usually for purposes of handcuffing and being able to place those hands behind, his or her back. In this case, this is what you see. So you're coming around here, you see now the 3 guards. Matthew, just advance a little bit further, if you would, please. You're seeing here now, stop it there, and it's a moving video, but you see placements of the gentleman who is wearing a blue suit, the forefront here in the video. I don't know if he's an MLSE staff member or security, or both, don't know. But what he has here, there appears to be placement in and around the grounded subject's head. That would be not consistent with training in law enforcement capacity or training transfer to security because of the potential for injury to a grounded individual. But in the center, the person with the darker colored suit, as you see him there, I can't really tell from that video clip, and you're right, I was looking on social media to see any other snippets or other positioning around. This is only through one lens or one camera view. It may not give you a clear picture or an accurate picture or account as to what actually is going on.
Right.
But I can't tell you as to whether this person's knees are on this grounded subject or whether he is just sort of, his knees are on the ground or the floor beside him, or if there's any placement of weight securing this person. Right behind him is a security guard. You see the word security written on his back.
Yes.
I don't know if that's contracted security or in-house security, but he's looking to his right. He's looking to his right. And when the video clips up, I'm going to be quiet for a second. And what you're going to hear is the verbiage, the communication. You want me to run it through the extent of the remainder of the video, and I'll talk.
Yeah, let's do that. And what we'll do is also for the watchers, we'll put some subtitles here as well, so we can make sure. Go ahead, Matt.
Okay, stop it there. One area, and there again, due to the appears to be a cell phone, recorded us. What I'm not able to pick up, I'm not saying it didn't occur, but I'm not able to decipher and or hear is communications from security in the top. Generally speaking, to make it a process consistent with a lawful arrest, you would tell a person they're under arrest. I didn't hear that. Doesn't mean that it wasn't said, but I didn't hear any, I want to see reminders or clarification or just to validate you're under arrest. Stop resisting. I didn't hear those words. Basically, I didn't hear really any verbal interaction from the guards.
Yes.
And this is worrisome in the event because I'm not suggesting it's a criminal threshold, but it certainly would be a training breach if these people have been trained, is because if I'm going to be applying force on you, I should give you a reasonable expectation of what you're required to do or not to do to mitigate or prevent the force being applied. In this case, probably the most relevant or prevalent communication would be, put your hand behind your back. I'm handcuffing you. I don't want to hurt you. Put your right hand behind your back. Put your left hand, let go of the lanyard. I'm going to be putting the hand behind. That's consistent because you actually give instruction to the individual that's on the ground to be able to comply. One area possibly of defense would be is that you're not giving me any instruction. You're not telling me what to do. You cannot really accurately define the scope of resistance.
Stephen, let me ask you a question. Just to pause for a second. The clip stated that a police officer allegedly was assaulted. Okay. Now, in my mind, when I heard that, and then I'm looking at the video, I know we said who are the two in the suits. Generally speaking, if you're a police officer, you're not going to be in plain clothes. So if the police officer was assaulted, where is he in this picture? Because there's nowhere to be found here. And I would think that, again, just if he was assaulted, he would probably be the first to take action unless he was assaulted so violently that he's just out of the picture entirely now.
Absolutely. And that's why I said right at the segue when we first jumped into this video, I said, perhaps the officer was injured. I don't know. Right. Whether this incident we're seeing was after the assault on a police officer or this person escaped the potential custody of a police officer. Right. There's so many questions that the only way this could be provided to you, and it's a fair question, by the way, is to be able to do an interview and an investigation to get right to the gist as to what did or did not transpire. Okay. But generally speaking, unless you're injured you as a police officer will be a part of the arrest. If you assault me, I'm going to arrest you. I'll take you down. I didn't see the officer there. And there are at times in large events, this is a Maple Leaf hockey game, it's a high-profile event. There are times you might have plain clothes or non-uniformed officers, but that wasn't articulated with respect to this particular video clip.
Well, you would have to identify yourself if that was the case.
Well, you would need to understand that I am a police officer, and that usually be through verbal and maybe identification of a badge. But I'm not saying it did or did not occur. We don't know what we don't know.
Okay, so Steve, with this said now, the gentleman that's on the floor, he decides right now he wants to go see a criminal lawyer.
Right.
And this is the part that I want everyone listening to understand how chain of events can work and where things can lead to. He decides I was wrong. He sees a criminal lawyer right now. Now, Steve, you're involved in the court process quite a bit as an expert witness. You've seen many, many, many cases, hundreds, possibly thousands of cases, I'm assuming, in your career.
Hundreds, yeah.
When you are now looking at it from the views of a criminal lawyer right now, that he's here and he's here to support his client, and he looks at this video, and you're looking at it from those lenses right now, because from imagine this is going through a court process or a discovery. Are you seeing things here now that would be looking just from this snippet as concerning, that a criminal lawyer can rip apart on here?
Well, I testify for the defense and the prosecution, so I have a history of testifying to both sides. I don't determine or validate what the questions will be, but I can only provide testimony to the scope of the evidence as long as a trier of fact or a justice would permit me. I'm starting to get a little wordy there, but what I'm pointing out is, as an expert, you don't decide on criminality. You don't dictate to the court whether this is right or wrong. You provide evidence to the point to allow a court or allow a justice to make decisions based on questions that you're asked, usually from a lawyer. But I would preface it, if I were to testify in court on this matter, I would make it very clear that I don't know the causational factors led up to this. But just in the spirit of 40 some odd seconds on the screen, on the floor, I did not see resistance to a level to justify or qualify any use of force application. 1 second before the video was started to be played, something may have occurred. But you are, generally speaking, not permitted legally to apply force in a historical perspective for something you did prior to, unless there's information you've got a weapon on you, or the magnitude of the violence requires me to apply force at this point. You may have to justify that, articulate that yourself. But this, again, I said this video could be evidence to show resistance. That would be argued. But the two people who are going to have to explain that, or three, is those three individuals you see on the screen. They're going to have to explain the magnitude and why the necessity to apply the knee. Matthew, I shared with you a little bit earlier a split screen double photograph. Could you just show that, please, for 1 second? So here we've got two pictures. Let's just talk to the one on the right first, please. And Matthew, if you can zoom in a little bit, that the gentleman wearing the blue suit, you see there the knee. I'm talking on the right side of the screen, Matthew. Sorry, the other side. That's it, sir. Look at the placement. That's really not subjective where that placement of that leg is. On certain circumstances, if you are able to suggest under oath that I needed this level of force to control, that may be one thing. But you've got two other individuals helping you. The movement of the subject seemed to be extremely limited at best. And that could become a difficult area. It may become a difficult area to defend. Don't know. Would have to hear what the explanation was. Mm-hmm. You've heard me ask the question before. What does CYA mean?
Right.
Remember that question?
Yes. I thought it was cover your ass.
Or,
Steve, you're putting me on the spot.
I hope so.
And I'm going to get this. It is... Can you articulate?
There you go.
Thank you.
And that's the bottom line.
Yes.
Bit of thunder, Constantine. But the thing is, you're going to have to justify it because, person, why did you do that?
Right.
And Your Honor, this is why.
Right.
This is why. And I need to do it at the time. It could be extremely explainable.
Yes.
And people who are sitting there, common people say that makes sense. Under those circumstances, I would do the same thing. Or, no, we have some difficulty here. Was this excessive? The threshold of being excessive depends on a number of factors.
Okay.
The challenge for law enforcement would be, well, not the challenge, the ability for law enforcement, you have certain provisions or protections under the criminal code that citizens do not.
Right.
You don't have to be perfect to be a police officer. I mean, at times, use of force is spontaneous. It may appear extremely aggressive, but that's, Your Honor, the best I could do at that particular moment. Hindsight were a gift. I concede that. But police officers acting in a capacity of often spontaneous, quick movements are given a little bit of leeway. Citizens, not as much. I spoke to the CBC, who actually also broadcasts Maple Leaf hockey games. You being a national broadcaster, it's certainly within your realm to ask Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, if these are security guards, And what type of training do they receive or not receive? And have they received any training on this focal point that we're seeing here today?
And that will 150% come up in court.
Yes.
Is the training of the individual.
It will likely will.
Yeah.
It likely, if it goes to trial.
If it goes to trial.
If it goes to trial.
Yeah.
Not to mention litigation, because
Right.
there's criminal matters now that have to be processed and or dealt with. And the scope of training. Were you provided a training matrix to exercise judgment in this realm? If so, to what degree? And if not, why not?
Well, Steve, one of my biggest pet peeves and frustrations is that there are many agencies, potentially hundreds of agencies, that are involved in these high-level event environments, or any environment for that matter, and they do not have training because their agency did not provide the training for them. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. It's going to be another episode down the road where we talk about that, because, you know, if there's all this talk about changing the reform of security, it starts from within. It starts from the individual saying, you know what, we're going to provide you training to give you the best leg up. Now, in a situation here, in this zoom up picture, we notice that it looks that the individual's knee is on the neck.
It appears to be.
Now,
Yeah, it appears to be.
we can all talk about a situation that happened a couple of years ago with George Floyd,
Yes.
where he was killed with the exact same situation. The world was put on check. Law enforcement was basically made very much aware about, hey, listen, stuff like that could be considered a choke, right? And it is a choke on the back of the neck. So the fact that it happened here, maybe he was aware, maybe he's not. But Steve, for those listening, because when I read some of the comments, people were saying like, well, what's the problem here? It's just detaining. Or what do you mean the knee on the neck? Why is that a big issue? Can you maybe just articulate a bit, why is the knee on the neck not considered a proper, I guess, form of takedown or restraint?
Awesome question, Constantine. Not being self-serving, a great question. And depending on the viewer, I think the viewer sometimes may have a personal agenda. I'm support this or I don't. I'm an activist or I disagree. I think the success or I think it's reasonable. And by the way, each viewer has the right for their opinion. I'm not suggesting that. But there are mechanisms taught in particular programs on how to hold a person down. And an alternative option for this would be what we call a shoulder round pin. You're pinning the shoulder or the upper back to the floor. And that is to mitigate or prevent situations such as anything close to the head or the neck area. That can lead to injury.
Right.
That can lead to an injury that can be at times prevented by utilizing a different technique or control maneuver. Assuming or trusting, should never assume blindly that these particular individuals have been provided training in that. But a codified program, one based on an element, should also talk about the issue of duty of care. And it's your particular standard of conduct that you would display towards an individual that you're arresting. Yes, you may have a legal right to arrest. That's not disputed. You probably would have, under certain circumstances, legal authority or justification to take a person down and restrain them. Restrain them from police, if you will, or making a citizen's arrest, likely in this particular area. But it's how you were to do it and what other options you may have had. And you may be given a little bit of leeway if you said, well, I haven't received training, or Your Honor, it was just circumstantial, I didn't mean to. But the video shows 4 or 5 times a repositioning. It wasn't just a one-offer. It was a specific repositioning in and around the area's neck or his head region that can lead a person to injury. Now, you see, I don't know if you caught or not, there's a bit of pooling of blood.
Yes.
I don't know when that was caused or what circumstance it was caused. This gentleman may have been bleeding long before these individuals started to physically engage with the ground individual. We don't know.
Right.
Or was it a result of some form of causation, potential injury as a result of these actions? We don't know. We also need to hear what the gentleman on the ground has to say, what his viewpoints are. What I find it is interesting is the lanyard in his hand, and I don't know what that will open up in terms of discussion or segue in, whether there was something didn't bleep right in a computer. I have no idea, sir, what that might be.
Right.
But whether this dispute was over an access or an entry attempt, or whether the lanyard wasn't his, who knows? But certainly in this particular point, as I said, this video could be used as a defense or as a means to convict. We'll have to see where that goes.
Well, Steve, thank you for sharing that. Let me ask you this. So everything is a certain way until the degree of the outcome is positioned. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here. So this gentleman is alive. We know he's alive right now.
Yes.
What would have happened if he died? And what I mean is that this is why this is, in my opinion, so important to talk about this, because the reality is, if he had died, would there have been a very different outcome in the situation? Because now we're dealing with the man being charged with some assaults that kind of took place. But if he had died, it would have elevated the situation even further. And then I think maybe scrutiny would have been even stronger. So I guess the key here is to make sure that you're in a situation that if something like this was to happen, and by the way, no two situations are the same, right?
Right, I agree.
So
I agree.
if this was to take place, and someone said, Steve, what do you suggest? Because this show is called What Would You Do? What would you have suggested that what would have been some courses of action in how they would have dealt with this situation that would have led to a more positive outcome outside of them being trained? Like, let's say they were trained. If they were trained, what would you be looking for from a trained individual?
That's fair. And there again, we always look at the what ifs.
Yes.
The what ifs can take us off in a whole different direction that may not be consistent and applicable to what we're looking at. But here, we got to take a look at the guards' actions. Was it lawfully based? Did they have a lawful authority to act? Was this person told that he was under arrest? Yeah. That's the first part of the equation. Assuming that was checked off and move forward, what level of any resistance was provided? Was there any de-escalation attempts made? In other words, was he trying to talk to you? And I would expect a certain amount of pushback. You know, you could be swearing at me. You could be really disagreeing with what I say. Perhaps you might insist on speaking to my supervisor. You could be saying this is rhetoric, this is nonsense, I'm legally justified. All those areas. But there's some, I'd call it a tipping point of judgment where something went not necessarily awry, but something was portrayed to you to give you the lawful justification to ground a person. Constantine, grounding is not designed just to be the simplest or the easiest way to control an individual. Anytime you take a person down on a hard surface, there's always potential for injury. You bang your head, you bang your shoulder. I've seen a lot of injuries, not necessarily with intent, but occurred. I have seen police officers criminally convicted of grounding when they are convicted with assault causing bodily harm, where the court would say that the grounding, although it's a valid technique and an improved maneuver, was not required or necessary in this situation. Keep in mind, any use of force situation has to be reasonable and must be necessary. And for the critics or the viewers who are looking at this, may I ask you to check out Section 34 of the Criminal Code of Canada, because there it gives you some instructions, if you will, in terms of a citizen, what a court will consider, what a court will look at in terms of applying force. And those are the first two words in that particular federal statute, sir, is that your actions must be reasonable and necessary. And who determines whether your actions are reasonable? Well, the court will, a judge will. And all these questions will come out usually through cross-examination. What other options did you have? The decision to ground, was it necessary? Was it reasonable at the time? And in the terms, you had three of you. You had three able-bodied adults, males, taking one person down. So right off the get-go, you're taking a look at there's numerical superiority. I got 3 versus 1. Sometimes the courts can look at that and say, well, okay, if you've got 3 able-bodied people controlling you, perhaps the level of force that you applied doesn't have to be that extreme. And there again, it's dependent entirely on the actions that will come out. And the person on the ground, he will also be asked questions. Were you told you're under arrest? You may disagree, but you don't have the lawful authority to physically resist. If you're told you're under arrest and you're resisting, and even on the ground, what level of resistance were brought? And did you assault someone? As opposed to, I'm going to create a potential scenario. I stand to be corrected. Potential scenario. I can't gain access to this event. It should be working. Can I call a supervisor, please? There's other times when these situations can be remedied with a bit of a calmer, cooler head. I don't know if that was the basis for this conflict. But if there are allegations that 3 security guards and a police officer were assaulted, the community is also going to beg to know as to, well, hold on here. Maybe under these circumstances, these guards' actions were reasonable. But you've got to take a look at your actions compared to training and the necessity of your actions at a particular time, because this has gone viral in the sense the community wants to know answers. Right. Why does it occur? Now, you heard one patron in the original video swearing, hey, leave the guy alone, he's bleeding. He wasn't happy with what you saw. And you saw another, what appeared to be an MLSE representative, hey, come on, move on. Right. But there was some pushback. And I don't know if this person saw the genesis of the arrest or saw the actions, but a passerby, likely a client or a person's a ticket holder, had some commentary, some verbiage to say, this is wrong. Mm-hmm. So it's up to public opinion.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that's very important, that when you are dealing with situations like in the public, I mean, for those of you that are not watching, that are just hearing this, there was a large crowd. Basically like kind of the old school day fights, right? A large crowd forms in the middle and then there's the thing happening. So all eyes are on you, which is another thing that you should be thinking about, is all eyes are on me while I'm dealing with this. So you want to be obviously performing to your best.
That's right.
Steve, as we wrap this segment, it's been extremely informative. I think it's fantastic to be able to kind of see things from this perspective, because again, the reality is in the professions of law enforcement and security industry, these situations are going to happen on a regular basis. Having knowledge is power, because you'll be able to make the best move. Any last words that you'd like to throw out into the industry as well when they're looking at this that they can kind of consider?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for that opportunity. Well, let's just take a look at security companies or trainers or overseers, managers, supervisors. We always need to remind our people is to really explain to the observers as to what you're doing. And that's usually remedied by speaking loud so all people can hear. When I provide a particular training program myself, I make certain that all people around you can hear what your intentions were. So in this case, sir, you're under arrest. Stop resisting. Put your hand behind your back, please. I'm going to handcuff you now. I'm not going to hurt you, sir. Do you understand that? That speaks volumes to what your intents were. And usually takes away the angry voice, because they understand, trying to understand on the bottom what the person's saying and try to get some response to the individual. So I would really implore security like-minded professionals throughout this province who's ever watching this video, let's to ensure our people are trained in de-escalation techniques, the grounding techniques, is unfortunately most altercations do go to the ground, and to make certain that those grounding maneuvers do incorporate the verbiage at all times. It should never be a silent movie, because if you can't hear what people are saying, it leaves it up to our own imagination, our own agenda to say, well, here's what the people are thinking. I don't know what people are thinking. And just to qualify too, when I write an expert report or I testify, you hear opposing sides. I don't take sides, Constantine. That would be inappropriate. What I'd say would be, well, we've heard evidence to this particular degree. If the court accepts this information as being valid, under these circumstances, this either would or would not be consistent with training. And you hear the opposing side. And if the court accepts that evidence, reasonable action at this time would have been for this person to be here. So, but if a person's on the ground and resisting and experiencing pain, what do you expect them to do? So it's sort of these equations I think are very healthy environments. I would highly encourage we show this video during training and put it out to the guards and put it out to the professionals serving our community and our industry. Say, what would you do?
Yes.
What do you think is reasonable? And keeping in mind that we have to be articulate, we have to be professional. The issue of media focus and public scrutiny can kill a business, create negative criticism. We can avoid that at times just by a different application of skill sets and incorporate that training.
Okay, I love that. Steve, I really want to thank you today for coming down and sharing your insight. You have an excellent way of articulating and looking at something that I feel many can learn and benefit from. For those of you wanting to experience, and I say the word experience because we've experienced it, we soak ourselves in it, and we apply it of the Stay Safe training. I encourage you to visit www.staysafeip.com. This is where you can find more about the Stay Safe programming through Steve Summerville. And also for agencies that are looking to level up their training in general, I also suggest you do that. If you want to reach out to ask us about our feedback on that, again, we're big endorsers of this. Again, Steve, thank you so much for your time.
Constantine, thank you so much for your time, the opportunity to speak. Until again, my friend, stay safe.
Stay safe. Have a fantastic day, everybody. Take care. Thank you for joining me in today's podcast. This podcast was created for protectors in the fields of law enforcement, executive protection, security, and anyone looking to level up their mindset. If you are learning from this podcast and you're enjoying it, please subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Sentinel Mindset. That's a zero-cost way to support us. In addition, please subscribe to the podcast both on Spotify and Apple. And on both Spotify and Apple, you can leave us up to a 5-star review. If you have questions for me or comments about the podcast or guests you would like me to consider on The Sentinel Mindset, please post all comments on YouTube. I do read all the comments. Please also check out our sponsors, thearenatoronto.com. The Arena was created to help all those in the fields of law enforcement, security, and all that achieve their fitness goals. I want to thank our producer, Matthew Doyle, and creative supports, Jaslene Singh, who help me with this podcast every week. We value your feedback and are here to support you. Tune into the Sentinel Mindset every week, where we look in the mirror to make real changes and explore what it takes to achieve greatness in your craft.
This podcast is brought to you by Executive Protection Lifestyle Canada. Make sure to drop by next week and don't forget to subscribe.